is time for my Christian review of regular books and no spoiler review of The Queen of Sugar Hill. Let's get into it. If you haven't been to one of these videos before, first I'm going to do my regular review, what you know and love to expect from a book review, star rating, would I recommend it, what I thought, etc. But then I'm going to get into my Christian review, and that's where I go over the basic pieces of a book that may or may not have a fellow believer or anyone wanting to read it. I go over far more information about my Christian reviews in the video that's pinned to the top of this playlist, so if you're wanting more information, go check that out now. But let's go ahead and get into my regular review. First off, I have to say that I picked up this book in March of 2025, which is the first time that Cynthia Erivo was up for an EGOT, which would have been if she had won the Oscar in 2025. She did not, sadly. However, Hattie McDaniel, who is the main character of this book, was an Oscar winner, and she was a Black woman to win an Oscar, which is very, very, very rare in those days. I think she may have been the first. And the treatment she went through, even after being an Oscar winner, an Academy Award winner, like, it just is unbelievable what she experienced. And so I absolutely just cherished this book, probably even more so because of the timing of everything. Like, seeing that Cynthia Erivo was not going to be the first Black woman, right, to like win an Oscar, but that she still had stuff that she had to overcome as a Black woman even today. So it just was really perfect timing, not planned, but perfect timing to kind of read this book in that time frame. But also the way that this book was written really made me step into the shoes of Hattie McDaniel. I honestly kept checking to see if it was a memoir because it felt very detailed and it was told in the first person. And I felt like it really did such a beautiful service to Hattie McDaniel's story and what she went through in her years living in Hollywood, experiencing oppression, segregation, racism, even in the midst of being this very, very, very well-known actress. It was beautiful, and I loved this story, even in the complexity that it brought, and I rated it 4.75 stars. The one issue that I had with it, the reason it didn't get a perfect 5-star, is I do think there was too much information. Like, we follow Hattie McDaniel for so many years, and there's a lot of pieces that afterwards in the ending, the author actually does express how she moved things around in Hattie's story. And I think some of those could have just probably been removed and still told a beautiful story about Hattie with a little bit better pacing. However, I still think it was incredibly well done and I had the best time. And I will just say an extra props to this author to like give details on how she moved things around and why, because I think it does such a bigger service to Hattie McDaniel's memory to not just pretend like that was fact, but instead to truly say like, there was fact, and then I moved that to make it make sense for my story. So chef's kiss. Now let's go ahead and get into my Christian review. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you can stay up to date with all of these Christian reviews because they're coming out all the time and I don't want you to miss a single one. First category I always love to touch on is smut or spice because it's very, very popular and in a lot of books. And no, there is no explicit descriptive spice in this book, so that's a win. There is quite a lot of romance, but none of it is described in that type of way, so yay. The second category is explicit language, and yes, there is some, mainly in the form of name calling, because again, we're talking about racism, segregation, and like all of those things in the 1940s in Hollywood. So you're dealing with just the reality of how Hattie McDaniel was treated. It's not severe, and I do think that it's easy to like understand why that it's important or skip past if it's something you don't want to be reading. The last thing I do just want to touch on is there are a fair bit of LGBTQIA characters that are sprinkled in throughout this book that are side characters or kind of just described within the story of Hattie McDaniel's life. So that's just something to keep in mind if that's important for you. Ultimately, I think this is a great book for anyone like 15 and up. I think it tells a super important story about our history, and the audiobook was phenomenal. So if you think that your teenager would enjoy the audiobook, you should definitely have them check that out. As always, you can find everything that I'm reading and rating in real time by following me on Goodreads. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, and I do have my own YouTube channel. Everything that you need to stay in contact with me is linked down below. However, we don't want to stop the conversation here, so make sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know if you've read this book or if you plan on it now that we've chatted about it, or send us an email at hello@trokia.org. I cannot wait to see you on the next one.